You know what? I didn't expect to be saying this, but I actually thought that Thanksgiving football, Black Friday football, was kind of phenomenal. Chiefs and Raiders on Black Friday? Loved it. It was crazy. It was chaotic. We're going to discuss it, but I loved it. Thanksgiving football, Bears-Lions, great television. Drew Lock, Cooper Rush, not as bad as it sounds. The worst game was the most highly anticipated game of the week, the Packers and the Dolphins. It was the worst game. Crazy, right? In this video, I'm going to give you my thoughts, my reaction, and my review of each Thanksgiving game that I sat down and watched, all 60 minutes of each game. I was actually live for 2 of the games on Thanksgiving. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on the state of the teams, what I saw in the games, including a big moment in the Lions and the Bears that changed a franchise moving forward. Let's begin with the AFC West Black Friday matchup. The Las Vegas Raiders traveled to Kansas City at Arrowhead to do what they did on Christmas last year. They didn't quite get it done, but could they have? Yeah. This was a really good football game, in my opinion. Very entertaining. And I learned a few different things. I was tweeting throughout the game. If you guys don't follow me on X, make sure you do. Mitch Milani, Milani. That link's in the description. I tweet from time to time, and I tweet all of my videos and all of my content so you guys can keep up with it. By the way, if you haven't Gronk spiked the like button, man, and subscribe. I know you're not subscribed, bro. Make sure you subscribe for more NFL content. The Raiders and the Chiefs. 1917 Kansas City. And I was tweeting about this game. Of course, it was a Chiefs game in prime time. I'm usually on X during these games, even when I'm reacting to it live on YouTube, because I have a lot to say about the Kansas City Chiefs. And I was unhinged during this game. I decided to back the Raiders before the game, plus 13.5, and never sweated it, 1 iota. And that has me thinking throughout the course of the game how bad this Kansas City Chiefs team is. Like, seriously, I'm not even joking for the camera right now. This is not for the views, for the clicks. This Kansas City Chiefs team is the worst Chiefs team in the Mahomes-Reed era. And I will confidently claim that right now. And I know I've said many times before, and I've been incorrect before about this voodoo machine called the Kansas City Chiefs. But this team is simply not that good. And I know Chiefs fans are going to say, Mitch, you're always wrong. And that's fine. That's fair. I'm not wrong about a lot of things. Most of the things I've been wrong about are the Chiefs, to be fair. But this team is not good. They are not good. In fact, I think they're more of a pretender than they are a contender right now. Don't let their record fool you. Don't let the record just mask their deficiencies, their flaws. They're screaming through the television every week. And I don't think this team is like last year's team. Because I don't think this defense in Kansas City is quite as elite or dominant. I thought it could be at the start of the season, but it has since regressed. I think Mahomes is playing worse. And I think the offensive line is worse than last year, which is crazy. Yeah, the receiving core might be actually better. Perhaps. But how much better? Rashee Rice was peaking during their Super Bowl climb and that playoff run. And they don't have Rasheed this year. They replaced him with D-Hop, but he's not nearly as explosive of a player. They added Pacheco back to the mix. He'll get going down the stretch. Their run game should be something they can rely on. But I don't view either side of this football right now for Kansas City as being elite. And that's my problem. When you look at the Chiefs in 2022 and in 2023, they won championships where people did doubt them. And I was one of those people. I thought the 2022 team definitely was more championship caliber. And the reason for that was their offense was still at the top of the NFL. They were ranking number 1, top 3 in a majority of statistics. This offense is not that offense, or even close. Mahomes is not that Mahomes, or even close. And in 2023, they had arguably the best defense in football. When defense in the NFL, you looked at the Browns and the Ravens, those were elite units. Like decades worth of football. They were some of the best units we've seen over the past 10 years. And the Chiefs were right there, especially in the big games against big opponents. And this defense is not the same. The Raiders moved the ball, created explosives, ran the ball, threw the ball. Their special teams did not play well in this game. And if not for some interesting decisions from Antonio Pierce, some missed field goals from Carlson, the Chiefs would have lost to the Raiders again. And I understand the Raiders play the Chiefs tough, but everybody plays the Chiefs tough. Like, you can't even use that as an excuse. They almost lost to the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young, and they made Bryce Young look like 2015 Cam Newton. They had a game-winning drive against the Panthers. Who are we? Guys, we were contemplating if the Panthers earlier in the year were the worst team I've ever seen in my life. That's how bad, that's the only word, the Chiefs are right now. And I realize I haven't really even gotten into this game because this is more about how I view the Chiefs overall. But when I dive into the game, 1917 Kansas City, the Raiders had more first downs than the Chiefs. The Raiders had more rushing yards than the Chiefs. That's rare. Especially this run defense of Kansas City that's been very good all year. 116 rushing yards for the Raiders, 63 for the Chiefs. This was an area they were supposed to dominate. And it wasn't like it was prime Priest Holmes running against them here. It was Sincere McCormick and Amir Abdullah. All right? The Raiders had more passing yards than the Chiefs. The Raiders had more yards by 100 than the Chiefs. The Raiders had more explosive plays than the Chiefs. The Raiders had more sacks than the Chiefs, 5-3. The Raiders punted less than the Chiefs because they missed 3 field goals and they were 4th and 1. They didn't get it. Good credit to the Chiefs defense, but also, was that not a first down on 3rd and 1? I'm not so sure it wasn't. And the Raiders, guess what, also had more penalties than the Chiefs, which is the reason the Chiefs won. 9 penalties, 101 yards to 7 penalties for only 40 yards for Kansas City. The Raiders also had more of time of possession. The only area the Chiefs led was on 3rd down. 7 for 16 compared to 3 for 12. They got Sincerely McCormick outplayed by the Raiders. A 2-win football team at home as a 13.5-point favorite in a game in which they led at halftime 10-3. They got thoroughly outplayed in the second half. Thoroughly. Brock Bowers had a 33-yard touchdown. Trey Tucker had a 58-yard touchdown. Thoroughly outplayed. Aiden O'Connell looked like Tom Brady wearing number 12 back there. 23 for 35, 340, and 2 touchdowns. Which then again goes to show that this Chiefs secondary is not the same as last year, which is a point that I'm going to underline as why I feel the Chiefs are not as good as last year. Because the Chiefs fans are going to say, Mitch, You were critical of this team last year. You said they weren't a contender last year. You said they were a pretender last year. I mean, this is legitimately the worst 10-1 team in the history of the NFL, according to point differential. The worst. By a long, wide margin, right? Like, this is not a good team. It's crazy to say. And I don't mean good as in terms of they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to win their division. This is not a championship caliber team. This is not a Chief standard football team. You investigate this team. What do they do at an elite level? Anything? Throw the ball, run the ball, stop the run, stop the pass, rush the passer. What do they do at an elite level? I guess when Harrison Butker is there, they kick the ball at an elite level. You just look at their recent play. Tampa, beat up football team. Let's just go through November. Tampa, they win in overtime at home on Monday Night Football. Pretty sure it was Monday night. 30-24 in overtime. I think they had to come back in that game, if I'm not mistaken. They barely survived against a beat-up Bucs team. The Broncos, they should have lost. They blocked a 32-yard field goal for the win. The Bills, they didn't get dominated, but they thoroughly lost that football game, right? I think that's fair. The Carolina Panthers 30-27 win. And now this Raiders game, 19-17 win. Previous to that, they played the Raiders again, another 2-win team, like we've been saying. The Raiders have lost like 7 games in a row. They won 27-20. This team has not played that well all year. I think their best performance of the year was Monday night on October 7th against the Saints. That was their best game all season. The Chiefs don't pass block well. Their tackles are a disaster. Max Crosby was tearing them up on every snap, and he played legitimately every snap of this game. Shout out to him. Kayvon Chason, former first-round pick of Jacksonville, total bust, by the way, looked like the next coming of, he looked like prime J.J. Watt. He was destroying the offensive line of Kansas City. They couldn't run the ball that well on the Raiders, especially on early downs. Kelsey had a disappearing act in the second half, totally outshined by the young, better Brock Bowers. 10 catches for 140 yards and a touchdown by Brock. Kelsey had a good first half, but once they started to take him out of the game, they took him out of the game. And I love how the Raiders approach their games against the Chiefs. They play physical. They play tough. They force the offense to make difficult throws and run actual routes and try to create separation. They play more man than other teams when they play the Chiefs. They mix up their coverages. They mix up their blitzes. They offensively, they usually have a great rhythm of play calling against Kansas City. I thought their play calling today, I think it's Scott Turner who's taken over their play calling. I thought it was very good. You know, between the running, the play action on early downs, I thought they threw it a lot on early downs. I thought O'Connell was very aggressive throwing the ball down the field. I love to see that. I thought O'Connell used his legs really well. O'Connell opened my eyes. I thought he played exceptional in this game for like most of it. Could he have thrown a couple interceptions that perhaps were into dangerous tight windows and double coverage? Yeah. But when you're an underdog of 13.5 points, I kind of understand why you're taking chances down the field. But to grant him, you know, I feel like he hit on a few of those too. Jacoby Myers was unbelievable in this game. I thought both running backs for the Raiders played well. Bowers looks like a superstar. Tucker played well. I thought the offensive line of the Raiders won their matchup in both pass and run game. I thought that the Raiders D-line beat the crap out of the Chiefs. And Jack Jones, I thought, had a really good game. If the Raiders had a fully healthy secondary, I can only imagine if they would have won this game. I mean, Nate Hobbs did not play. Jacorian Bennett, I think, is out for the year. He's on IR. They had injuries. It wasn't like the Raiders were fully healthy, and the thing is, the Chiefs kind of are. Like, outside of Butker, they got back their guys. I mean, there's not really any excuses you can make. It's not like Kelsey wasn't playing, or D-Hop wasn't playing, or Tooney wasn't playing, or Chris Jones wasn't playing, or anyone important. They were playing. Mahomes was playing. He was 26 for 46 in this game. 26 for 46 against the Raiders defense. This is not even the Raiders defense of last year. This is a Raiders defense without Wilkins and Hobbs. That's two of their best players. Like, really? Like, this Chiefs team is not good. I never sweated a 13.5, bro. I thought the Raiders were going to win outright. Actually, I didn't really want to say this, but at halftime, I bet the Raiders to win by win margin of 1 to 6 points at halftime. They were down 10-3. It was plus 1,000. I bet $100 on it. Okay, I still won money because I covered the 13.5. I put $100 on it. I'm like, okay, maybe the Raiders come back. The way they're playing, this game's open. Like, the live spreads were ridiculous. The Chiefs were never covering any of them. Not a 9.5, not a 7.5, not a 10, not an 11. Like, the easiest bet in football right now is to bet against the Chiefs when they're laying big numbers. It's legitimately, you could do it blind. It doesn't even matter the opponent. It could be Carolina. It could be Tampa. It could be the Raiders. It's not a matchup thing. It's not a quarterback thing. It's not a coaching thing. They just don't cover spreads because they're not a good football team, because they don't do anything at an elite level. Their quarterback is not as good as he used to be. His prime is over. The offensive line is not good on the tackles. The run game is average. The receivers are slow other than Worthy, and he can barely run a route or catch the ball. And Kelsey, he's washed. The defense is good, but it's not dominant, and that's the problem. I would be genuinely shocked if the Chiefs won the Super Bowl this year. Genuinely shocked. And I understand their best player is the refs. Like, even in this game, there were a lot of ticky-tack calls early in the game. There were a lot of phony baloney calls. And there were a couple on, that 3rd and 1 where, how do they not review that? How do they not challenge that? How do they not look at that spot? At least. And then the reason they won this game, which I haven't even addressed yet, is because the rookie center on the Raiders snapped the ball before the quarterback was looking to take them out of field goal range. Talk about lucky. This is literally the luckiest, flukiest team in NFL history. This year's Kansas City Chiefs, dating back to last year's Chiefs. This is the luckiest team I've ever seen in my life. They are so lucky. People are actually wondering if they've done a deal with the devil. They're so lucky. And maybe that devil is Taylor Swift. I don't know. But there's something to it, bro. Like, it's unbelievable. No team gets more calls from the refs. No team gets more fluky ass wins. Like, holy crap. I'm not one to complain. Like, I'm not saying, like, they're 11-1. Cool. But just because your record is 11-1 doesn't mean I think you're going to win the Super Bowl. If you think they're better than the Lions, you're smoking drugs. If you think they're better than the Eagles, you're on coke. If you think they're better than the recently engaged Josh Allen's Buffalo Bills, you're on crack. Like, this team is not in that conversation right now. I don't think they're better than the Ravens. Like, this team sucks right now. They're not good. Andy Reid can barely walk. Matt Nagy, what does he even do? Steve Spagnuolo might have been figured out. I mean, he got diced up by Bryce Young and Aiden O'Connell. He might have to call the helpline, bro. Like, what is going on here? He got diced up by Bryce Young. The Chiefs should have lost again. Again. Every game I watch, I'm like, they should have lost. Like, they legitimately should have lost. You can't even make, like, 3 missed field goals and a 4th and 1 where you botch it. And at the end of the game where you botch a snap. Like, I can't say this about any other team in the league. It's actually insane. I could go down the list. The Raiders game right now, they should have lost. Denver, they should have lost. Carolina, they could have lost. I wouldn't say should. Tampa, they could have lost, but they didn't. And then I wouldn't say should. Okay. The Chargers game, I wouldn't say that they could have lost. Atlanta, they could have lost for sure. There was some interesting reffing there. The Bengals, they definitely should have lost. The Ravens, they could have lost. There was a toe out of bounds that would have sent the game to overtime. I mean, my goodness, that's a lot of games. That is a lot of flukiness. Flukiest team in NFL. Flukiest team in history, bro. This team is a joke. All right, I'm moving on, but that I had to say it, and I needed to get that off my chest. That's insane to me. Let's get to last night's game, Thursday night's game. The Packers and the Dolphins. Packers won 30-17 over the Dolphins. This was the most convincing victory of Thanksgiving and obviously Black Friday. The Packers looked like a contender. Just outright contender. Contender in the NFC, contender in the AFC, contender for the Super Bowl. I think they are the dark horse of the NFC. And I like how they're trending. I like how they're playing. And congrats to anyone that bet on the Packers because you saw this one coming. Statistically, there was a lot of garbage time stats from the Dolphins. The one thing that I would note that Miami did not run the ball well, which is an area that they've been very successful as of late. Devon Achane only had 2 yards a carry on 7 carries for 14 yards. They had 39 total rushing yards. Raheem Mostert, I think, might have had the biggest run of the day. Tua only incompleted 9 passes. He was 37 for 46 for 365 and 2. He diced them up in the second half in the fourth quarter, but it wasn't enough. Miami was also 3 for 5 on 4th down, which made a major difference in this game and allowed the Packers to keep the lead. The Packers also had 5 sacks. Their pass rush showed up in big spots here. And Miami had 10 penalties, especially a lot of them coming early in the game. I think from the cold and the crowd of Green Bay. So, box score is a tad misleading, I would say, overall. I thought Green Bay kind of controlled the pace, controlled the game. They jumped out to a huge lead, which kind of allowed Miami to get a lot of yards. But I thought Love had one of his better games. He was 21 for 28, 274, and 2. I thought he rarely actually had an inaccurate ball or an inaccurate pass. I thought he made some nice downfield throws to Reed, Kraft, and Watson. I love when Reed and Watson are the primary targets in the receiving game, and Kraft was often the check down guy or the quick outlet in the offense that Miami was kind of conceding in the early game. And I thought Love was doing a great job just keeping the offense on schedule and getting the ball where it needed to go and getting a lot of yak within the offense. I thought the Packers were definitely the more physical football team, and I thought they controlled the line of scrimmage for the first 3 quarters. Josh Jacobs did not have an impressive box score, but I thought he had a good game. I also felt like Wilson had a decent game when carrying the ball as well. Reed did have 2 touchdowns on 3 catches, only 24 yards. It felt like more. I think he might have ran as well for a big gain, if I'm not mistaken. Watson did go over his receiving prop. I think he had like 62 yards or something like that. That was a Patreon bet. We also had Green Bay on Patreon. We went 5 for 6 on our bets on Thanksgiving. So congrats to anyone on Patreon. If you guys do want to sign up and support the channel, support me, and get my bets every week, you can check that out. That link is in the description. It's $10 a month for all my bets. I will say I'm not a professional bettor. I don't claim to be. I'm just somebody that knows the NFL really, really well, and I use that expertise to bet the games. So if you want a different perspective instead of people that just play the numbers, that's kind of how I do it. All right. So what else? I thought Green Bay better at the line of scrimmage. Offensive line was impressive. Love was impressive. LaFleur, I just felt like the Packers were the better team in terms of toughness, grit. I thought Miami moved the ball decent all day, but they just couldn't find the plays in the red zone. They couldn't find the plays in crucial third down. Sometimes they'd get sacked. I thought Tua had a really rough first half. He clearly looked affected by the cold. I thought Tyreek still looks a little bit lesser than himself. Waddle was a bit quiet early. Jonnu, I thought, played well. But this was clearly just an indication of a team that I thought was the Packers are a team to me that have transformed from more of a finesse team. I thought one of their weaknesses with Aaron Rodgers was that they were a little bit too finesse for a team that plays in that cold and that snow. I think they've become much more physical. Maybe it's the Josh Jacobs factor, or maybe the new defensive coordinator, but they feel a little bit tougher. Comment if you think that. Comment if you believe that as well. But there's something intangible about Green Bay when watching them this year. I feel like they feel a little bit tougher. Maybe it's the maturity of their roster. I'm not quite sure. They have the flair, they have the finesse, but they've combined it with a little bit of grit. And that was huge early in the game because Miami looked soft. They looked charming soft. They looked like they didn't want to be there. And so much to the point where right before the kickoff, I actually placed a little bit more money on my bet because I saw Jalen Waddle in one of those full-on like parka outfits, and he had a ski mask on. As soon as I saw that, I knew the Dolphins were going to lose. I didn't even have to watch the game. I saw Jalen Waddle on the sidelines in a full ski mask and a parka, and as somebody that grew up in Canada and played in the snow and the rain and the cold, I knew it. I just knew it. When you don't want to be there, you don't want to be there, bro. You don't want to be there, man. So, Packers were impressive. Honestly, I don't have like huge takeaways other than I think the Packers are legitimately a contender. And maybe we can get into this a little bit more here. I think the Green Bay Packers are the team that could creep up on Detroit and Philadelphia. I think they're that team to watch out for in the NFC. Matt LaFleur is a successful, brilliant offensive play caller and good head coach. And he has really been able to mentor and groom this team. I feel like they have such a good kind of like chemistry and togetherness. It feels like a family with the Packers because they have been drafted to this franchise. There's not a lot of players that are signed. There's Jacobs, there's McKinney, maybe a couple others. But many of them have been drafted, groomed as Green Bay Packers. Then you have the fact that their offensive line is elite. They can run the ball. They can pass protect. And Love at his best can make throws at every level. And Love at his best can go toe-to-toe with the best quarterbacks in football. He's got just enough athleticism. He's got just enough arm strength to play in the conditions. Much better than Tua. I thought that's one of the low-key things about this game. Jordan Love, in these conditions, in this cold, in this wind, much better quarterback than Tua. Despite what the box score might suggest, you watch them throw the ball. You watch the comfort. You watch the confidence. It's all Jordan Love there. Josh Jacobs gives them a battering ram, a hammer in the backfield. Watson, Reed, speed, and quickness. They didn't have Romeo Doubs in this game. They didn't have Jair Alexander in this game. They didn't have some of their perimeter talent in this game. They were just the more physical, brutal, gritty football team. Lucas Van Ness had a great game. Rashawn Gary had a good game. This Miami offensive line's been playing well. The Packers had 5 sacks. And I just like this team, man. I think if a team is going to upset the Eagles or the Lions before the NFC Championship, it's going to be this team. I could see them going to the Super Bowl. I think they can match up with the Lions. They're going to be playing them. We'll see how it goes. But I was impressed. 30-17 Packers. I might have to do like a video on them or something. I'm not sure. Giants and Cowboys before we get to Bears and Lions as the main event. Cowboys 27, Giants 20. I thought the Cowboys were pretty much in control of the game for the most part, outside of the opening series from the Giants where Drew Lock scrambled to the 1-yard line and then Tracy punched it in. The Giants looked like they were maybe going to upset the Cowboys right there and then in the first quarter, but after that, I felt like the Cowboys were in control and were the better team. And it basically came down to the story of the game was the Giants can't block a soul. The Giants got bullied at the line in terms of they couldn't block the Cowboys. Like that was as simple as that. You know, Micah Parsons couldn't be blocked. Adigizua couldn't be blocked. Their run game because of it was okay, but not amazing. You know, Tracy had 9 carries for 32 yards and 3.6 yards per carry. Singletary struggled. And because of it, you know, every time the Giants were in a third down, it was hard for them to convert. You know, they could have put back there Phil Simms or Eli Manning, and it wouldn't have mattered because they just couldn't block. Like Drew Lock, people will say, he sucks, whatever. Drew Lock wasn't that bad. I actually didn't think Drew Lock was that bad. I just felt like he didn't have any time. Like there were plays where he would have play action. He would get, under duress. It was hard for him to kind of manipulate the pocket and move around because I thought the Cowboys were winning their one-on-ones up front. I thought that the Giants really struggled to pick up the blitzes of Zimmer. Whenever they did the double A gap and the mug look, they just struggled with it. Locke was 21 for 32, 178. He had an interception. That was an incredible play by Overshone for a touchdown. He batted it with one hand, caught it, and then ran in for a touchdown. It was supposed to be a screen pass for Locke, and Locke could have probably just threw it in the dirt. But to credit Overshone, I mean, incredible play by him to jump, bat it, catch it, run in. I mean, incredible stuff. But Locke also had some good stuff on the ground. He did run for a touchdown. He also had a long scramble. He was effective as a scrambler as well in this game. And I thought he was light years better than DeVito. I thought if DeVito was a quarterback in this game, it would have been a blowout, I think. Cooper Rush was solid. You know, he didn't do anything wrong, per se, right? He was 21 for 36, 195, and a touchdown. He didn't risk the game, and Locke did that more than him. And I think that's part of the reason the Cowboys came up on top. Rico Dowdle also had a very good game. I thought he was actually phenomenal. Like, I thought he had his best game of the year. 22 for 112, 5.1 yards per carry, and a touchdown. You know, making people miss, breaking tackles. I'm not sure what his broken tackle rate was in this game, but it was very high just from the eye test. Neighbors had a good game, 8 for 69. Nothing like too crazy, but I thought it was pretty good. Lamb was kind of I thought Cook's returning was nice to see. 3 for 16. He had a touchdown. He had the game-sealing catch. Tom Brady was raving about him. You know, I still hate Bill Belichick for trading Brandon Cooks after only one season where Tom Brady won the MVP. You know, we did win the Super Bowl in 2018, but looking back at it, I think Cooks would have really stabilized this offense in 2019 as well. And I think that was a terrible trade by the Patriots. Just throwing that out there as a Patriots fan. Because I think with the draft pick, we picked Isaiah Wynn or we picked Sony Michel. Both picks were not very good. The Cowboys had more first downs, 21-17. Cowboys were much better on third down because they blocked better and because the Giants could not block, right? The Giants were 3 for 12. That was the story in terms of line of scrimmage. Dallas ran the ball well. Dallas brushed the passer well. That's why they won. 122 yards rushing. 317 total yards for Dallas, only 247 for the Giants. Both teams punted 5 times. Giants also had a ton of penalties, 13 for 98 yards. I think quite a few of them were pass interference. There was a lot of calls where I was like, oh, come on. You know, as somebody that had a 7.5 with the Giants in my parlay with the Packers, that was very, very heart-beaten. okay? But they covered because Drew Lock came up clutch. But, man, that was actually the only thing I got wrong this weekend, I think. That was the only thing I got wrong, was the Giants covering the spread in terms of on my picks. I got the Chiefs to win, Raiders to cover. I got the Lions to win, Bears to cover. I got the Cowboys to win, and then the Giants were close, but they didn't cover, and then I got the Packers to win and cover. So, yeah, that was the only thing I got wrong. You guys let me know your pick record in the comments. I know a lot of people wanted the Lions or had the Lions. Giants were a bit of a popular upset pick. I think a lot of people also had the Chiefs, potentially. So let me know in the comments. But yeah, that was like obviously not the marquee game, not the big game that everybody wanted to watch. Giants 2-10, Cowboys 5-7. Cowboys actually at 5-7 is pretty crazy. I think you got to give Mike McCarthy some credit and Zimmer some credit for coaching up this football team. Parsons said they're going to make a run to the playoffs. Good luck with that, Micah. But I think this team is playing better football, and I think they've showcased that the last couple of weeks. So congratulations to the boys on Thanksgiving. Finally, it feels like they've been struggling on Thanksgiving. They get a win on Thanksgiving. I think they've won 2 years in a row, but they really haven't been that great on Thanksgiving the last 10 years. The main event for this discussion is the Lions winning 23-20 over Chicago. And where I want to start is Matt Eberflus getting fired. So Matt Eberflus was fired earlier today, and I can't say I disagree with the decision. Me, as somebody that has played countless hours of Madden, like an insane amount of Madden in my life, I almost don't even want to tell you how many hours I've played. As somebody that's been in an online franchise league, not this year, for the first time since I was 13 years old, I have played a lot of Madden. So I have seen, and I'm going somewhere with this, I have seen a lot of game clock management. I am very good in those. I actually think as a football fan, as somebody that studies the game, as somebody that analyzes football, I think I'm better at these situations than probably 99.5% of individuals, including NFL head coaches, apparently. NFL head coaches are so bad at clock management. It's actually insane. But Matt Eberflus failing to call a timeout after his quarterback was sacked is literally like one of the most egregious coaching decisions I've ever seen in my entire life. You are not warranted to coach an NFL team if you do not call a timeout after a sack. That is like in the rule book of clock management. You have to call the timeout there. You have to call a timeout. Because after a sack, it takes so long. Because the player has to get up. And this isn't even a Madden thing, right? Like Madden is different because their computer, they get up, it's fast, right? In real life, the guy has to get up. The offensive lineman picks him up. Everybody has to scramble towards the line. They have to call a play. It's a rookie quarterback, which you have to take into account. You've got to get everybody settled. You're on the road. It's in a dome. It's in Detroit. It's loud. Like, Lose Yourself is playing. Like, what are you supposed... Like, bro, call a fucking timeout. All right? I was screaming. I don't remember what I said on my broadcast, but I'm like, Caleb, snap it, snap it, snap it. Caleb, snap it. And because the guy wasn't, he thought, no timeout. Like, some of the worst coaching I've ever seen, bro. Some of the worst coaching. And Matt Eberflus, let's be fair, solid defensive coach. Solid defensive coach, fundamentals, good attitude behind his defense. Solid. His defense played solid in this game. Not a good head coach. Not creative. Not a good game manager. Terrible on the road record, which says a lot of different things. I think especially in terms of managing a team, in terms of managing the clock, that is a big thing on the road, right? You have to be a better game manager on the road. Terrible. So yeah, I get it. This was a terrible staff, if you really think about it. Shane Waldron and Matt Eberflus. Look at how talented this Bears team is. On paper, it's talented. There's a reason they can go toe-to-toe, play-to-play, drive for drive with the Detroit Lions, who are a top 5 most talented team in football and arguably the best team in football because they're very talented. They have individual talent that can stand up to the Lions. They don't have good coaching, offensively or defensively. I think Thomas Brown's done a pretty good job. I'm not sure if that will keep up, but he's going to get a head coaching gig. He went from offensive coordinator to head coach all of a sudden. That's going to be interesting. But this was totally warranted to fire Matt Eberflus because his defense has regressed lately. It's not really that amazing anymore. And it's not worth it at this point. Like, he has done nothing for the offense, nothing for Caleb Williams, the future of the franchise. And he's gotten enough shots at this point. And I want to go back to the offseason. I don't understand why he wasn't fired before. I don't understand why they didn't just go, okay, Eberflus and Fields era is over. We're going to start fresh. We're going to bring in somebody new. We're going to have him work with Caleb Williams, and they're going to be our future. They're going to be our duo of the future. Instead of wasting a year of Caleb's development, instead of wasting a year for Caleb and his coach to grow together, and for them to build this team for Caleb. Yes, do I disagree with Poles and kind of how he's built this team on the offensive line and on defense a little bit, with the defensive line kind of taking a backseat to linebacker and cornerback? Yes, I do. I'm kind of frustrated by that. But coaching's been a problem too. Okay? 23-20, the Lions win. This was a tale of two halves. The Lions dominated the first half to an egregious degree. Like, they looked like an absolute juggernaut in the first half. I think the Bears had 2 first downs in the entire first half. Maybe not even 2. I don't even know. You know, they had like under 50 yards. The Lions were destroying them in the first half. And yet the score was only, I think, 16-0. Because there was 3 field goals in the red zone. The Bears did a good job of holding the Lions once they got to the red zone, which is a tough thing to do. And Goff scored a touchdown as well to make it 16. Goff to Laporta. Laporta had 2 touchdowns, the 2 touchdowns for Detroit. It was 16-0 at half. And the Lions were running the ball. Montgomery, especially. Gibbs needs more carries still. Electric, top 5 running back in football. I thought St. Brown was quiet in this game. Jamison Williams had a great first half. He was moving the chains. He was their go-to guy early in the game. I thought Goff was playing pretty well early in the game. 21 for 34, 221, and 2 touchdowns. Everyone was playing well. Their defense was clamping up. Tough, tight man coverage. Run defense was on point. Swift never got it going. 11 for 39, 3.5 yards per carry. Maybe he had 1 or 2 explosives in the second half, but that was about it. But then the second half happened, and it really started with the fumble from Gibbs, which was just an exceptional play by the Bears' defensive back to knock the ball out, flying out of nowhere to make that play. The Bears just started doing what I thought they would do from the start, which was kind of spreading the Lions out, letting Caleb use his legs, and finding one-on-ones with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And all of a sudden, without Carlton Davis, the Lions' secondary and their pass rush was getting exposed by quick, decisive decisions by Caleb and good route runners that can get open against man and Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And it was simple as that. It's occasional Cole Kmet, occasional DeAndre Swift catch. But it was really just DJ Moore and Keenan Allen winning one-on-ones constantly. And that allowed them to go 7 for 15 on third down overall, 17 first downs, 300 yards, 223 passing. You look at Caleb's performance, 20 for 39, 256, 3 touchdowns. He probably outplayed Jared Goff in this game overall. And he moved the ball continuously throughout the fourth quarter. 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. And nearly a game-tying field goal attempt, if not for the botched timeout. Because they were right there. They were right in range of potentially getting a field goal. They had, I think, another opportunity if they would have called the timeout. So, yeah, absolute disaster by Matt Eberflus. Kind of takes away a potentially really exciting overtime and a comeback from our Thanksgiving football feast. But I thought Caleb showed how you can attack this Detroit team. Spread them out, shred them. Throw the ball. right? And I thought Detroit played well in the first half, but their defensive injuries started to wear on them. Their secondary started to weigh on them and wear on them. And yeah, they ended up with 400 yards and 25 first downs, but a large majority of that came in the first half. It was a dominant first half. Again, Caleb took a couple bad sacks. Detroit ended up with 4. Caleb had some nice scrambles, though, as well. And there was also a huge point in the game. I think it was the first touchdown by Detroit in the third quarter, or the last touchdown, I should say. But in the third quarter, Detroit scored a touchdown. Laporta. That only happened because of a horse collar call by the ref that was never a horse collar. It's a terrible call. It would have been 4th and 6. Instead of 4th and 6, it was an automatic first down. If that never happens, Chicago might have won this game. So I thought this was a weird game. A tale of two halves. Detroit only punted twice. They had 25 first downs. But they almost blew it because they were not good in the red zone. And their defense just could not get a key stop when they really needed it. And Chicago almost came back. So it was a close game, kind of like I expected, but it also, I think, showcased Detroit's flaws to a certain degree. I thought Chicago's pass defense was overall pretty strong. I thought the O-line of Chicago was hit and miss. But man, it's tough to remember anything other than Eberflus totally botching that timeout. Like, that was so bad. Penalties were relatively even. Give Caleb credit. Give the Bears credit for coming back and making it a game. The Lions were on the ropes. They really were. The Bears played them well. I don't know. There's something about this Lions team, man. I think they're a Super Bowl team, but at the same time, I question them against good passing teams. I really do. We'll see how they play against Green Bay. They still got Buffalo on the schedule. We'll see if San Francisco is healthy enough to give them a game. They still play Chicago again, and they play Minnesota. They don't have a single easy game for the rest of the year, so we're going to learn a lot about Detroit as a Super Bowl team moving forward. Obviously, they're 11-1, and they're a lot more legit 11-1 than the Chiefs. Because the Bears are not a terrible team like the Raiders, all right? But still, I was not super impressed by the Lions. They have struggled on Thanksgiving. They seem to have trouble on Thanksgiving. They somehow got it done, though. So, yeah, that's it, man. Those are my thoughts on the Thanksgiving and Black Friday games. Let me know yours in the comment section below. Gronk, spike the like button and subscribe. It's Mitch. Deuces.